All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. This video comes from the Young America's Foundation and is titled Ben Shapiro Debates Student Who Argues Parents Should Let Their Kids Explore Their Gender. We're about to get into this. It's 10 minutes long, so I'm going to try to let it play for you guys, but I'll interject at whatever point I find the most interesting. You know the drill. But yeah, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe while you're watching. Now let's roll it.
Hello, my name's Brad. I'm here representing a lot of the progressive students here at UMich. And I just have to, I wanted to know your stance on trans people as a whole, and then I'd like to maybe have a conversation, a short one about
Sure.
what you believe.
Well, first of all, thanks for coming in and asking a question, Isa. That's great. I mean, sometimes you don't get that. I mean,
Okay, before Ben Shapiro even goes, I just want to pause and say, notice the respect that he got when he asked that question. But compare his respectable, mild-mannered approach to, stepping up to ask Ben a question versus, some of the other cases that we've seen where, these kids come up there hostile, even though the whole room knows that he doesn't agree with them ideologically or politically. They still show him the respect because he came to just ask his question respectfully. You know what I'm saying? Respect is earned, not given. He showed it, so he got it right back.
My stance on trans people is I'd like to characterize this differently. I think that there's a few different categories here, and everybody's lumping everybody together in one category. There are people who have long-standing gender dysphoria, right, or gender identity disorder. Right? That's a real active disorder that does exist. Okay, that does not mean that these people are members of the opposite sex. Okay, this is where I reject the argument that if you have gender dysphoria, you have an actual mental disorder under the DSM-5. This means that if you're a man who believes you're a woman, this makes you a woman. You're not a woman. You're a man who believes you're a woman. I have tremendous sympathy for that difficult body dysmorphic condition. That does not make you a member of the opposite sex, because only objective biological reality can make you a member of one sex or another sex. Then there are people who claim to be members of sexes that don't exist, claim pronouns that don't exist, who claim that they are gender fluid, which is not
make-believe people.
Not really a thing or has never really been characterized. There are folks who claim that without any evidence whatsoever that they have gender identity disorder, and that suddenly they discover at the age of 15 that they're gender questioning, but there's not really a persistent level of belief that has lasted for a persistent series of time, and people are being given testosterone or being given surgeries on the basis of this. And
yeah, I will say, I think that a lot, because they did some study to show, what is it, like 30% of America's youth identifies as something that's not just normal boy girl. I think a lot of these cases are because this has gained a type of fad like popularity. For people who are looking to feel accepted, there's this community of people who will accept you, and it's like a herd mentality type of thing. Kids just following one another. I was a kid. I was younger. I've been there in high school. I've done it. You know what I'm saying? I remember when I was young, like the depression, when I was in high school, like 16, 17, you started hearing people talk about depression a lot. I remember, I had a friend who was actually depressed. I hung around him so much. We always talking about depression. I thought I was actually depressed. You know what I'm saying? Like, so it can just rub off on you. And I think that's a large case of it is that. It's not that people are actually, like Ben said, these aren't boys who are actually girls. It's just people that think it because society is kind of pushing it and allowing it.
And then there are people who are intersex, which again is another category. And I think what happens in these conversations, people tend to conflate all these categories. So what they'll do is they'll say, well, trans people exist. And I'll say, okay, so what do you mean by that? And they'll say, well, there are certain people who have Klinefelter syndrome. Okay, those are not trans people. Those are intersex people. That's a completely different category. Those are people who have an actual biological condition. They still happen to be a member of one sex, by the way. They're still sexed.
Yeah.
They just happen to have secondary sexual characteristics of the other sex. Okay, so that's my general perspective.
Yeah, I think for sake of brevity, I think we'd be able to have a conversation about gender. And I really fail to understand how you, you claim that there's a lot of genders that are made up, and this is. Could you elaborate a little bit more on that? I think
Sure.
Yeah.
So I think that there's been a false distinction that's been made between sex and gender, and then gender has been read in as more important than sex. So basically, the idea of gender was a concept that was brought up by a college professor named John Money back in the 1960s, and the basic idea is that gender was a set of cultural characteristics that we impose on people of a particular sex. So it's not that women have babies, it's that women are gendered as though they have babies, and this is what makes a woman a woman. Okay, that's not correct. Women have babies. Or we'll say that gender is a series of characteristics that we put, it's a series of stereotypes, essentially. But then you'll see the trans community argue that if a boy has stereotypical attributes of this gender, this makes them a member of the opposite sex, which doesn't make sense. You can have effeminate boys. You can have masculine girls. I mean, this has been a feature of life for all of human history. That doesn't make them a member of the opposite sex. So when people say gender, what I want them to do is define what they mean by gender. If they just mean a set of culturally attributable attributes, and they say that that's completely separate from sex, first of all, I reject that. I think there is a strong correlation between gendered behavior and sex.
Yeah, I mean, that's how we socialize children. I mean, I think it's a pretty, the connection's there, and I don't think it goes
It's not all
further.
socialization is the argument that I would make, and that's backed by the fact that in the primate kingdom, for example, there are heavily gendered areas of behavior. The notion that basically boys and girls when they're born are androgynous widgets, and then we make a boy by giving him a truck, and make a girl by giving her a doll, that's not true on any sociological level.
Again, I find it really...
Yeah, I guess just ask yourself the question: if you left, a boy on an island and a girl on an island, like what would they naturally just grow up to do? You know, what roles would they fulfill for each other? You know, would the boy realize, oh, snap, I'm stronger than her? Would the guy realize? You know what I'm saying? Like, how would it play out?
So we just clapped for Ben comparing primates to humans. I want to establish that. And then on top of that,
and you know, I was gonna say, when I started to speak, I forgot, but I was gonna say that, a lot of the leftists, they don't like it when you compare when you compare us to animals. Jordan Peterson did that in his book, and I know he got a lot of flack for that, comparing us. He didn't compare us to lobsters. He just used the example of the lobster kingdom's hierarchy and compared it to our hierarchies. But for some reason, they don't accept those. They don't accept those comparisons.
I'm talking about the attribute of mammalian biology. So yes, in fact, I will argue. I'll compare human beings to literally any member of the mammalian species when we are talking about sexual dichotomy, which is the basis of all reproduction in mammalian species. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. But I do want to bring it back to the concept of socialization in children.
Mm-hmm.
I've worked a long time in public schools. I've noticed that students, this gender line that we're speaking of, the binary that you were referring to, I think many of us fall within those two lines, man and woman. I'm not saying it's you either have one piece of genitalia or the other. I'm saying like we have masculine and feminine traits throughout that we pick up from our family, the world around us.
Sure.
Yeah. So I'm feeling, if you agree with that.
But that's not what makes you a man or a woman. If a boy likes dolls, that doesn't make him a girl. Okay. And if a girl likes trucks, that doesn't make her a boy. And I feel that we're doing grave damage to kids by arguing the opposite.
I think we should allow them the space to explore that. If they
by the way,
yeah.
I don't. First of all, I do think that it is very important to provide rules and roles for kids. I think the idea that kids are to be sort of left out there in the wild and then they do whatever they do. We don't treat them like that with nutrition. We don't treat them like that with education. We don't treat them like that with a lot of things. And the idea of teaching boys to actually embrace their boyhood, I think, is quite a good thing. Now, there are exceptions to every rule, and there are kids who are, as I say, boys who will be more effeminate, and they shouldn't be bullied for that or mistreated for that.
Yeah.
But to suggest that this makes them trans or makes them a member of the opposite sex is the thing I'm really arguing against, because that ends in a lie that leads to suicidal ideation, it leads to tremendous confusion, it leads to tremendous psychic pain. You're telling a lie to a kid, and lying to kids is not something I'm very much in favor of.
Yeah, and I think, speaking on suicidal ideation, I think maybe denying the fact that, like, it's okay for, a young person to decide if they fall within a certain gender line. I fail to understand how that affects you personally and how that hurts the child.
Right. So anytime society sets a rule, it affects me personally. You're not asking me how a kid in Saskatchewan identifying affects me personally. You're asking me to go along with the lie that that kid's personal subjective sense of identity shapes the definition of sex, and that I refuse to go along with. Because as you say, kids are in fact malleable. And the notion that we're supposed to teach all 5-year-old kids that you can be a member of the opposite sex is deeply disturbing, chaotic, and wrong.
Again, and
the overall message from the trans community is that how you feel is more important than what you are, and that's just where they meet a wall when debating people like Ben or someone like me, just people that don't believe in it. Anyone can say how they feel. You could feel like something new every single day, but what are you? What were you born as?
that's not what I'm prescribing. I'd like to be clear that what I'm saying is they should be allowed to explore whatever portion of
if by allow you,
traits.
it depends. If by allow you mean, do I think the kids should be like locked in the Matilda chokey for playing with a doll or something? No, obviously not. That's child abuse.
Often, yeah, in very orthodox spaces.
Child abuse is illegal, and it should be illegal. Okay, but the notion that if my kid expresses gender confusion, that I'm not allowed to say to my kid, my son comes home and he says one day you're a girl, he says I'm a girl, and I say to him, you're not a girl. That's biologically untrue. You're a boy. When you're a kid, you're confused in your feelings. The idea that that's a form of child abuse is a lie. That is not a form of child abuse. That's actually how you parent.
Yeah, I was gonna say it sounds like good parenting to me.
Yeah, and again, I'm allowing you that space, but on the other hand, you're opposing the very opposite. You're saying that it's sick and twisted for parents to allow their kids to explore different parts of themselves.
It is sick and twisted to present kids with the notion that boys and girls are not separate in humanity, and that boys and girls are not two separate and dichotomous forms of the species Homo sapiens, and that the idea that there is no biological reality to that whatsoever, so that a boy can be a girl and a girl can be a...
Damn, Ben, I know you at a college, but do you got to use such big words all the time?
The idea that there is no biological reality to that whatsoever, so that a boy can be a girl and a girl can be a boy, that is a form of child abuse. That is the same thing as me teaching my kid that my kid can be a horse. My kid cannot be a horse. That is not real. And if I were to teach my kid and take seriously the argument that my kid could be a horse, I'd be doing them tremendous psychic damage. I'm sorry, I feel like we're kind of running out of time here, but I really appreciate that.
Could I just get one more thing?
Sure, well, go for it.
Again, I'd like to, we're making comparisons to animals, and you're getting a chant for it. And again, it's not my favorite thing.
Yes,
but
because...
but I appreciate your point in saying that, you would be willing to allow another family to let their child explore, certain genders.
Well, I wouldn't allow a child to explore the lie that they can be a member of the opposite sex.
Oh, there you go.
If they want,
But
if they become, I disagree with the basic idea of quote unquote genders entirely. If the idea, because if you're going to degrade everything down to the behavior of human beings, then we all have our own genders. Literally every single human, we could just have names. We can get rid of the idea of gender entirely, and I can just call you Bob, right? Like we can all have our own. That's the easiest way to do this. We treat each other as individuals with a bevy of different attributes, rather than saying my gender is pansexual, fluid, 45, XYZ, okay, right?
That's so dishonest.
How is that dishonest?
You're making this straw man about pansexual gender.
No, name a gender.
It isn't, and you know it is.
So you do it. You name a gender that you think exists outside of male and female.
No, I agree that people can lie within the bounds.
Okay, well, again, I really appreciate the time and the back and forth. I think it is productive, and I appreciate you doing it.
Yeah, no, and again, I don't believe any of you have
I'm not letting him off the hook for that. Ben asked him to name a gender. He did not name a gender.
Malice views. I think a lot of your views are founded in the reality of the world. But I hope that you at least would allow yourselves to come out to some of the more progressive groups and maybe have these conversations.
By the way, having conversations like this, I encourage everybody who's conservative to have these kind of conversations to go on this side.
That was my intent in coming here. And seeing how hard you guys were on the protesters out there who were using their First Amendment right was really tough to watch, especially for Americans who claim that the First Amendment is something that you co-sign. I'm sorry, but I have to say it.
I wasn't out there, so if anybody was mistreated as a protester, then I apologize on behalf of whoever mistreated a protester.
Ben is like, my hands are clean. I don't got nothing to do with that. Yeah, you guys, that's it for the clip. My biggest thing with this guy is just wanting for kids to express, and he even says it, like he says kids, children to express their sexualities. The way I was raised, I wasn't supposed to be expressing no sexuality. Sexuality wasn't even a thing. I'm gonna keep it real. Sexuality is not even a thing I felt comfortable speaking to my mother with until I was like 20 something, 25 maybe, like last year. It's just not how I was raised. Kids should not even be thinking or concerned about sex. Maybe cute little innocent relationships, peck on the cheek type thing, once they turn 13 or 14 or 15, whatever. But sexuality, I don't think that's a box that should be opened up to children at all. And honestly, anyone come around me saying that they think kids should be able to explore their sexuality, children, I don't want them around me. That's not how I want to do things. I'm not okay with that. That makes me uncomfortable. But yeah, that's it for the reaction, you guys. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe on your way out the door. Till next time, I'm out. Peace.